What do they fear?
Well, Johnson feared that if the government shut down, he wouldn't be able to get it open again without giving Democrats everything they wanted.
And what did McCarthy fear?
I think that was McCarthy's approach too.
Same.
Yeah, they don't. They posed. They don't. You know, the establishment Republicans, and I don't use establishment in the pejorative sense, but you know, the mainline Republicans, folks in leadership.
Yeah.
It's the accepted theory that we don't shut the government down.
Okay, so what if you do? Why would the Democrats have control that you would have to give them everything?
I was never persuaded by the argument.
I'm actually curious. Why would even Johnson have that fear?
Well, I'm not persuaded by the argument either, because I depend on the escalation of powers and the checks and balances, and I depend on that, and I'm still a believer of that. And so what the thinking is this, is, you know, it's the classic, you know, 1980s caricature of the little boy that says to his mom, if you don't give me the ice cream, I'll hold my breath till I die. And she caves. When in the reality, what you need is somebody on the Republican side with cojones that simply says, I will shut the government down and we won't open it again. And look them in the eye and say, do it. You know, do it. It's the same BS that, you know, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden said about, oh, what if they use heavier weapons in Gaza? Do it. You know, like as if it's some threat. You need somebody with cojones that says, look, you're not going to threaten me like that. I'm going to the microphone right now. I'm going to tell the American people, look, they're going to keep the government shut down. They're going to hold back funds. It has to be a Republican that is unafraid to do that, Pat.
And you may lose in the end.
Are we tracking the other time?
Yeah, but you may lose in the end. I'm not saying they would have succeeded.
Lose what?
But they could have at least advanced the ball in terms of highlighting this abuse of power that was so controversial that Republicans were willing to say, look, if you want to fund the government, it's not going to include jailing your political opponents, censoring your political opponents, allowing an invasion of the United States. Pick something to stand on the Hill over. And they refused to do that. And now we are where we are.
Why isn't Supreme Court getting involved? Why isn't Supreme Court getting involved to say, hey, guys, knock it off? Same way they did with Colorado. What are you guys doing? Stop.
They can't.
Why can't they, though?
The Supreme Court, there is a gate at the front of the Supreme Court, and it is the Solicitor General. And the Solicitor General hears with the court what matters. So the Supreme Court...
Oh, no. The Solicitor General is just another lawyer. He's the DOJ lawyer.
Correct. But he presents, and then the court decides what it will hear, and the court also pre-filters. It doesn't go out like an active police action.
Well,
things come to it.
I mean, you're partly right. You have to ask the Supreme Court to get involved. The party does. Sometimes the government does through the Solicitor General's office. But in the case of Trump or someone else about this New York eviction, he'd have to go up to the Supreme Court. And
who's he?
President Trump's lawyers would have to bring the case justifying Supreme Court involvement. They have not.
Why not?
I don't know what their thinking is. I mean, my suspicion is the challenge. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I kind of am generally familiar with the arguments here. Is the Supreme Court rarely gets involved in state prosecutions until they're concluded. So you get sentenced, you do your full appeal, and then maybe we'll take a look at it.
So maybe July 11th or even
maybe
after that.
Yes, maybe there are opportunities there. I would argue that under Supreme Court precedent, they can do what they want. You know, that someone like President Trump, who's being victimized in this extraordinary, unusual way that has national implications, is the type of extraordinary circumstance that would allow the Supreme Court to get involved. Now, Trump may lose, but at least the Supreme Court will have considered some of it, and you may get good language out of the Supreme Court from dissenters. I guarantee you there are members who would be more than happy to police what's going on up in New York as a wild abuse of power and an attack on the federal system in our constitutional republic. And that language might be very useful in the public debates and in instructing the lower courts in New York, if they consider this appeal in the ordinary course, on how they should be proceeding.
Who knows about the constitutional law, who is the best constitutional lawyer right now that knows what would be the creative way to go to the Supreme Court, similar way that Giuliani back in the days went to that professor at Rutgers University to help him with the RICO law. Who is that person? Used to be Dershowitz many, many years ago. Who is the formidable name today that can hold a meeting to say, this is the right thing for us to do next?
Well, I think there'd be a few people, and you've dealt with lawyers in your professional life.
Many.
And they all argue with each other about what the best way forward is, right? And it's up to the client to say, this is what I want to do. And there's a mix.
The client needs to know the option. Client's not the lawyer, right?
That's true. And there's a mix of political and legal consequences for proceeding in some way versus another way. If you lose, does that make you worse off than better off if you proceeded another way? But as far as I'm concerned, he's facing a real irreparable damage in July with this sentencing. And if I were Trump, I would be demanding every possible tool be used to stop that sentencing from happening.
But you got to know it's got to be somebody that's I'm not looking for a 95% chance. I want the lawyer that said to Giuliani, this is how you can take down the mob. You can take them down by going this way and this way and this way. Not, you know how some of these movies you're like, okay, arrest them. We can't. We don't have them. Go ahead and arrest them. We can't arrest them. Right? I want to know 100%.
And the other trick is from an outsider's perspective. Outsiders coming in. So some have suggested that the states could sue New York. And under the Constitution, the Supreme Court has original jurisdiction, meaning they don't have to go through the lower courts. They can go immediately to the Supreme Court to handle disputes between states. And let's say Texas sues New York saying, you're messing with our election through this process. I don't know what – you may pretend that's something legitimate that you're doing. We know what it is. It's election interference. You're gagging a candidate for our voters. You're messing with our ability to participate in this federal election, and we want the Supreme Court to shut it down. You're not going to keep on holding our candidate hostage or the number one candidate for president hostage and try to rig the election that way. We have rights too, and we have a right to hear from this candidate. We have a right to have him campaign. Frankly, Democrats and Republicans have that right. And so the Supreme Court should step in and say, you're right, New York can't hold the rest of the country hostage with this kangaroo court proceeding. And you raise all the issues legally that raise questions about the deficiency of the whole process.
This to me,
you got to just, and you don't need to be, I would submit you don't need to be a lawyer to think like this. You just need to kind of say, I want every tool available and kind of figure out what has happened before and see how it might apply.
But what I want right now is this is no longer like, look, let me put it to you this way. So you got 5 months is all you got, okay? After July 11th, you really have how long? Less than 4 months, okay? Because it's November 5th, so 4 months. Let's just say you got 17 weeks is what you have till election. From July.
Well, early voting starts in September.
I get that, but decision time, I'm saying like November 5th, whatever the deadline is, give or take.
Yeah.
So to me, who behind closed doors is holding an emergency meeting with the top 10 most qualified constitutional lawyers to fly out and have a meeting to say, what are we doing with this? Because, here's how this works. How long did it take? At this point, how much does America know those 51 intelligence officers that signed saying there's nothing in the Hunter Biden laptop? How many people know that was bullshit? Everybody knows that was bullshit, right?
Yeah.
But it worked because it was timely for them to put it out there. Do those people give a shit that now they're caught knowing they lied? They don't give a shit. It's over with, right? Okay. How many people in America know that the Russia collusion wasn't Trump, it was really Hillary Clinton paying that $35 million, whoever she paid? How many people know that?
Yeah.
Everybody. But it doesn't matter. It worked. For 3 years, everybody believed that this guy, on the left, that this guy was linked to Russia, So how many people does it take for COVID to say, hey, Trump is a racist against Chinese people, and look at this, let's go to Chinatown, and the COVID vaccine didn't come from China. How dare you say such a thing, call it China virus? I call it China because it came from China. So that's racist, Mr. President. Would you say that to me because I'm Chinese? Is that why you're saying that? No, I'm saying it because that's where it came from, right? But it worked, and it doesn't need to work for 2 years. It doesn't need to work for 10 years. It just needs to work for 5 months. So if this works for the next 5 months and Republicans are not being paranoid enough, boom, then we find out next year in July, guess what? Trump was right. Who gives a shit?
Yeah,
he lost again.
He lost.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.